And we move on with the current agenda. And our next item is 7.2, and that is the Waikato Civil Defence or Emergency Management Group Submission Working Group. Okay. So that's going to be presented by Vicky Cowley. So Vicky, please.
Thank you. I'll take the report as read. So, okay. This report's about changing the already agreed representative makeup of the submission working group. Sorry, it's not about changing the base makeup, but about correcting a previous resolution that was just too restrictive, because technically the resolution didn't provide allowance for flexibility needed in situations where additional members on the submission working group are beneficial. So just seeking approval from the Joint Committee as the working group is delegated to complete and lodge submissions on behalf of the Joint Committee and report to them afterwards. The recommendation I've put in there is that the chair of the Joint Committee may co-opt additional members to the submission working group on an as-needed basis. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. So, as I say, I'm very, very supportive of this, having just recently gone through quite a lot of the legislation and finding that we had some people online, but many unavailable at the time as well. So it just allows the chair and to actually organise a group that can discuss the legislations that we are actually facing with and put in submissions to operate. So I personally am very supportive of this. And just to give an example, we had the discussion gone, for example, on New Zealand emergency management legislation, resource management, consenting and other changes, fast track approvals bill, the natural and built environment bill, spatial planning bill, and also the review of the future of local government, just to give an example of some of the things we've faced. And that, I believe, will continue with our current economic climate. So I'm happy to move the acceptance of this from the chair. The motions are on the wall, so I'm quite happy to move that. Could I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'd like to second and just endorse what you just said. It's a very good idea.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Is there any further discussion on this document? Yeah, Councillor Buckle.
Thank you, Chair. Just a clarification to ensure that this document, is that going to be enough to deal with the, like, for instance, I won't be standing again, so you'll be able to just co-op members as required, and there won't be any special need for anything else.
I believe personally, and I'm going to say this from the chair, that it will also allow me to co-opt members that I believe have an interest or knowledge in the particular subject that we're dealing with as well. Although it does at the moment represent large urban, small urban, large rural and coastal, but there could be situations where we want two of one of those to give us a better viewpoint on what we need to discuss.
And through yourself, Chair, that's the point I was just going to make. It doesn't change the core, or it's not intended to change the core resolution, and that is to have representatives from the different environments, whether it's coastal, city, large urban, small rural. The base still sits there. It's the ability for the chair to bring in others, whether there's more of a city view required, or there's more of a coastal, or there's a subject matter expertise. But the core doesn't change, is my understanding. So even if you were to stand down and not join us again next year, Councillor, then there would still be a requirement for the area that you cover to be filled on that committee by somebody in a similar council. Doesn't necessarily need to be Hauraki District Council, but it's a council that has those features.
Does that adequately answer you? Thank you. I just thought it developed it myself because I've talked to Vicky about this particular issue and accepted the ideology of it. So I've got a mover and I've got a seconder. Is there any further discussion on the motion? No further discussion. I place the motion on the floor. All in favour? Against? That motion is carried, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. We now move to joint Committee Induction Resources, 7.3. And this is to invite Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee members to provide feedback to the group on current induction processes for the new members. And I think this is going to be quite critical in the near future, because I think a number of us sitting around the table at the moment are probably not looking for re-election. There will be probably, and changes of direction with people not available any longer. So as I say, in doing this, I think it allows us to just look at the situation to clarify what we're doing. For somebody that's brand new, it's a pretty daunting project to first disseminate all the difference between KEG, Joint Committee, and what we do and how we do it. But I think if we do have a good induction, that will help us get more operational quickly. Vicky, you're allowed to develop that a little bit further.
Thank you. The items emailed out on Friday were the results of a survey sent to Joint Committee members. Just asking, using your experience over these 3 years and what knowledge and resources and support would have been beneficial. And I went through the results quickly, so I had time and just developed a little bit of an outline based on what was provided. Just to look at it from a structure, because looking at what's needed to get in there, I do believe there will need to be a workshop. So rather than leave it till December and then trying to get new members, you know, it's the earlier we can get into calendars, the better. But the proposal is in the December meeting, because not all local councils have done their delegations, as what we've found before. So you end up doubling up if you start the training then, but we thought that would be an ideal time to invite the KEG members too. So whether there's new elected members on the committee, and looking at the KEG chair, not thrown, and you know, like the KEG chair would speak to them about what KEG's role was in supporting them as governance, and a little bit of an introduction so everyone knows everyone right from the start. And then at the first meeting of the next year, 2026, that we really cover, this is after your normal meeting, the Joint Committee members' roles. And a lot of the questions is always about their role within their local communities as well as on the group and the differential between the two. And there were some requests for that there be some material on understanding the group policies, acronyms, and knowing about what training's available. And that's when I then led into proposing a workshop, because I think of the feedback was that workshop we had going through, it wasn't the development of the strategic group plan, but taking that time to go through that as well as the group plan actions. So there's a clear understanding of what we're working towards right from the start. And potentially, if there's time, we could add some of these other subjects in, but then at the following and the next meeting, let's look at it from that national perspective, where we fit in all the other groups, all the legislation. So sort of breaking it down in that style, and thought by the September meeting, because being one of those priorities, is actually doing a deep dive into our high risk, the hazards and risks, like to provide that real thorough understanding on that. And the last meeting of the year, then to do a reflection on what you've learned and set the priorities for training for the next year. So I've kind of outlined those. Those dates are to be confirmed, obviously, because you set those dates by resolution, and democracy will work with those. But that's the pattern that we use. It's always, we start at the start of the year and it's the fourth week of that month, the third week of that month, yeah, through the quarters. We cut it back so we don't go too late in December. So I've just utilised that pattern. Thank you.
The chair recognises the group commander, controller, Julian. It's just that you were down to actually present here on my agenda sheet. So I just wanted to make sure I wasn't standing on somebody's toes and getting out of it. But thank you, Vicky. And I think that, yeah, thank you. I think that is something that we all are very much aware of. And everyone, as I say, we're facing an election in the very near future. It's a local bodies election. So we can probably be looking at a number of new people around the table. So having that infrastructure in place is going to be important. So can I have somebody move, or thank you, Councillor Lee.
Yeah, just through the chair, I'd just like to say I enjoyed the survey, and of course I went back to when I first started on the Joint Committee, and it was just mind-boggling. I don't know whether my answers reflected that, but there was just so much to take in, and for a new councillor to come to the joint committee. We've got to have a lot of tools, from staff to help us get our head around how we help with the the civil defence approach as a joint committee member. So yeah, I'm happy to move, but yeah, thanks again, Vicky. I enjoyed that.
Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Fully support a structured induction. 12 years ago when I arrived here, it was one of those jobs that was exactly. And so I arrived, and we had people who are very experienced, and unintentionally often the job is given to people who may have worked in the forces or police, and so they've actually had some experience of dealing with a Sims type event. But yeah, so it can be quite a lot to come to terms with, and so I think if we can get the structure, and I urge you all to, many of you will be now considering an induction process for the incoming councillors, if we could support Vicky and the team, and promote the induction process as part of the induction process at our local councils. And I'd support more workshops as well. It's sort of just a quarterly governance meeting. It doesn't really give you everything that what you need, unless you're going to go out and make a lot of more effort on your own initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I actually take that on very seriously. As Chair, I think that that's a very good suggestion. Perhaps develop a liaison early in the training to move forward. I think that's a good idea. We can look at that. I've also got currently at the moment Deputy Mayor Kevin Taylor from Taupo wanting to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just support those speakers who've spoken in favour of an induction program? Totally support that. I want to acknowledge Julian. I'm late to the party in this training, having just come in the last few months, but I do have a background in emergency management. I'm one of those who the previous speaker spoke about, coming from police. Can I also suggest that any workshop we have widens the scope of knowledge to include how this all fits together nationally, regionally, locally, and the other emergency services. I think it would also be beneficial if we had at least an introduction to Sims for everybody new to the role, so they get their head around that. But I'd absolutely support any induction program and workshops on that for the new trinium. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That was very good. And I've also got Deputy Mayor Alan Gollard.
Just looking at your structure here, and I agree with the topics that you've put down here, I just think it's probably spread out a bit much, that you're basically taking a year to have the full induction. And my opinion would be that it would be better to have an earlier workshop, maybe in early March or something. I agree that December's really too early because the council are still sorting things out. But to have maybe a full day workshop and actually try and cover a lot of that stuff up front, rather than spreading it out after the meetings and things through the year, because it sort of takes a whole year just about to get through the whole induction. So my opinion would be that let's try and have a more earlier session.
Thank you for that. That has some merit, and as I say, trying to do an induction actually at a meeting is always very difficult. You know that in your own environment, we all do. So I do think that this is something we will view from the chair and from the management group, and particularly with Julian, that we talk about a venue or something where we can take people to and coordinate and cooperate together collectively and build infrastructure. I think that's critical. So we can look at that. I have Councillor Pike.
Thank you, Chair Brown. yeah, as a new member to the committee, and as someone that has had not really any experience or exposure to CDEM, I do see the need for this more formalised induction as opposed to relying completely on our individual authorities. Also acknowledge Deputy Mayor Williams' comments, and CDEM foundation training is something that I've required in a recent meeting for all our EMs and HCC induction process. And I think the more shared understanding we can create between our joint committee members and council EMs will benefit the group in our CDEM strategies. So yeah, support those comments and the work here.
Thank you, Councillor Pike. That's very good coming from somebody like yourself, you know, and your own personal experience. We now recognise Councillor Buckthorpe.
Thank you, Chair. At the risk of sounding like an echo, you're getting a very clear message that it's a really important topic, this. And my own experience 9 years ago when I came into this role was I just got dumped in the deep end and tried to soak up what information I could. And it took me quite a while to get my head around the role and to hopefully be more effective. So yeah, it is really important to get this underway for the new members. Yes.
Thank you for that. That's an excellent thought. I know what you're saying. I was a bit luckier than most. I had Hugh, who knew me anyway. He gave me some documents to read. Okay, recognise Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. MPDC will be one of the councils that will have a new person sitting here next year. I've spoken to the Mayor already about the appointment. I fell into it halfway through a term, and I think because of my 15 years in the Army and with a Ready Reaction Force unit, they think or thought that it would be a ideal person for it. But being active and in the Ready Reaction Force unit is completely different to sitting around a table like this. So I will be meeting with the Mayor again and ensuring that the right person is put forward with knowing what is involved and looking at what, or the people that are putting their name forward. There's going to be another young person, probably not, a little bit younger than me, that is coming through. So we need to consider that and allow for the younger person instead of getting us retired or pensioner folk as well. Chair.
I take that comment with a lot of merit in the grounds that those that are standing aside can actually implement or talk to the people coming in to the fact that this role, the importance of it, and the fact that we need people here that will have of the calibre that are capable of producing what we need, okay, because it is a very responsible role. And as I say, I think those that are retiring certainly have that knowledge to pass on. That's important that you do so. All right, I think we've had a pretty open discussion on that. Does anybody else want to make a statement? Vicky, do you want to make a statement?
Yes, so I just wanted to clarify the feedback. So taking on board, I hear a workshop potentially 2 weeks prior to that 30th of March meeting in 2026, and maybe not limit ourselves to within the joint committee normal meeting hours, actually set what needs to be covered in that day. And if it's 5 hours long, it's 5 hours long and at a different venue. Because I do take that on board. It wasn't until I wrote this down, I was like, it's 12 hours a year you meet. 12, you know, and you can't just cover off things within that short length of time. So I just want to confirm that's everyone's, yep.
There being no further discussion on this, have we got a mover at the moment? We have Thomas and, yeah, so we have a mover and a seconder. Can I place the motion on the floor, please? All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Just to advise everybody, I normally do this at the end of everything, but there was a date set aside on the 23rd of June, okay, an extra date that we didn't get through our agenda today. We have got through the agenda, we will do. So that date is cancelled now. So the 23rd has been cancelled. We move on to the next item, which is service level agreements, and that's going to be presented by Julian. You could probably do it from your chair there, Julian.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
You give Vicky, or just let Vicky get a glass of water and before her next go. So this is just the purpose of this is to provide the Joint Committee with an update from ourselves at the Group Office in relation to service level agreements. I'll start off by contextualising it by saying the service level agreements are an operational matter and not normally before this group, but I provide this to you today, this update today, through the lens of your role as looking at the collective capability and capacity of the group as a whole, and try to give you some assurance that the changes do not undermine, the changes that are going on do not undermine the capability or capacity of the group as a collective, although there are some operational issues that it has had a roll-on effect at the group office. So yeah, the Waikato Regional Council have decided to cease supporting the delivery of local civil defence services via service level agreements. They have been in place for varying degrees of time, but those service level agreements have been with Hamilton City Council, Hauraki District Council, Matamata District Council, and South Waikato District Council. And that has involved Regional Council on behalf of those entities, those councils employing members of staff, and so the WRC staff members out of part of our organisational structure, but operate out of those councils. The civil defence legislation, be very clear, is that the responsibility is on the relevant territorial local authority to deliver local services within their area, and they decide how it's done. And with those service level agreements, they decided to enter into an agreement where it was done by a service level agreement with the regional council. But that's now come to an end. The regional council is not supporting those post 30th of June this year. So we as a GMO and the group office, our staff are supporting those 4 councils with a transition away from the service level agreement with the regional council to different operating models that take it back to the local authority responsibility or closer to the local authority responsibility. Hamilton City is doing its own thing. It's taken its functions back in-house. And then South Waikato, Hauraki and Matamata are looking at a shared service in terms of creating a capability and capacity between those 3 councils. So all of those activities that are being supported by the GMO, I believe, will not diminish the collective capability or capacity of the group. There will be no gaps because we've made provision and we've been in dialogue with the councils that the emergency management staff and that currently are employed by the regional council, they and their corporate knowledge will transfer over into the shared service, and Hamilton City Council have employed their own new staff, and we've been involved in supporting the recruitment process for that. So yes, there will be some new structures that will cause probably there will be some little bits of teething problems like there are with any new structure, normally very operational things like email addresses, etc. But overall, the capability of the group will not be impacted. What I do need to point out, there will be some there has been a run-on or flow through into the GMO. So we have had some roles within our group office that are either significantly or partly dependent on the revenue from those service level agreements. So we have so many hours for a team leader to look after those service level agreements, and we have a business support person that supports those service level agreements. Because those service level agreements are going from the regional council, we've done a change process, HR change process within the GMO, which has resulted in the disestablishment of a team leader role because there's just not the scope for that role to retain a team leader role. But looking at the support that this group needs in terms of the joint committee, we've not handed back that salary and said we no longer need that role. What we've said is because a lot of that role is funded from central rates, not from the SLAs. So we have identified more, at the risk of saying another Vicky, but we've created a replicate role for Vicky in the strategic environment to support the Joint Committee and the KEG and all the work that's going to be coming out of central government in the future around assurance in particular. So it's all within budget. It's all within the long-term plan. It's FTE neutral. There will be a short-term blip to the operational budget this year because there are some redundancy issues that would need to be taken care of, but they will be washed up. Any overspend in salaries that creates will be washed up next year with a corresponding underspend. So that's it from me, Chair.
Thank you, Julian. That's a very comprehensive, explanation. Has anybody got any questions for Julian? Councillor, Deputy Mayor Goddard.
I suppose, look, I've got a question around the additional staff, or not additional, but the new staff position, as to who actually approves that. Is that in the past, when it was a staffing issue, we've been presented with a business case for a new staff member, which we've approved. This time it seems to have happened, and it's just being reported. I'm not sure if KEG's approved it. I'm not for 1 minute saying that that position is not needed. I think it probably is, given all the changes. It's just a process thing that I'm questioning.
Thank you for your comment. Perhaps, Julian, do you like to respond?
So some of the, so we've not presented it because it's not it's within, as I understand it, and I'm happy to be corrected, this was an operational decision, and we have previously requested additional FTEs. That is where we come to this committee for, is the funding for additional FTEs. We would not, I'm operating within the funding envelope of the current LTP, so I'm not asking for that. What I've done is looked from an operational point of view. Some of the functions of that team leader, when they weren't a team leader, still need to be done. And then some of the activities that Vicky and the team were employed to do have not been getting done. They've not been, and it's nothing to do with Vicky or the team. Their performance has been outstanding. This has been just a capacity issue within that team. So I have taken the operational decision to transfer what is left of the LTP budget, convert it into what I see as a gap operationally. So I saw it as an operational because I wasn't asking for additional FTE or additional budget within the LTP. I'm happy to be, obviously I'm happy to be corrected that was the wrong approach, but certainly that was the approach I took.
Just so, has KEG, did it go through KEG or?
So that it did come to KEG, but it took the view that it was an operational decision. It wasn't outside of the approved budget for salaries or FTEs. And furthermore, KEG and indeed this group monitors the outputs, and it's largely for Julian, the operational managers, to determine the resource they needed within the budgets to deliver those.
Thank you, Councillor. That's very good. We recognise at the moment, Councillor Buckthorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment, really. I'm fully supportive of the change with the direction that the SLAs are going. I would have. I just want to comment that I'm quite disappointed that this was forced on us. Because we had just gone through a change. We had a try agreement with Matamata Piako and TCDC prior to this, and we were hopeful that WRC could have put a bit more effort into trying to make this work rather than taking the stance that they did. However, time moves on, and we're just about through that process again now, and looking forward to new arrangement that we have with South Waikato and Matamatapiaka.
Thank you for your comment. As I say, I do tend to concur with a little bit of what you've just said too. I do agree a little bit. All right, we have item 7.4, service level agreements update. The motion's up on the wall. Is there any further discussion on it? And I put the motion to see if anyone wants to move it. Oh, okay. Deputy Mayor Alan Gollard and back second by Councillor Buckthorpe. Right. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried, ladies and gentlemen. We move on to 7.5, which is the draft group plan actions. This is just implementing the draft group plan. And to present the emergency management group plan actions 25 to 30 to the Joint Committee for information, noting that the structure is approved by the Joint Committee and consent endorsed by the coordinating executive group. So that's for you. I think, Vicky, it's got you down here. You had a glass of water?
Okay, well, thank you, Chair. I think I can cross off my first paragraph there. So this is like our first year separating out the strategic from the actions. So the action plan outlines the major work streams and projects planned for the next 5 years. Its purpose is to enable and monitor and report on the areas where the group aims to achieve uplift in achieving its strategic objectives and outcomes. Quarterly reporting alongside annual review provides opportunity to ensure that we have alignment with the group's strategic goals and allow for responsiveness to changes in the operational environment. Okay, the approach is to provide assurance to the Joint Committee on progress rather than being lost within business as usual reporting. It also ensures the group's actions, progress and any change are visible to the public. So that will be coming into this arena, not through after action reports and focus changing outside. So it gives better public viewing into what we're doing and that accountability. So routine business as usual activities will continue, and as the operational work, they're monitored by KEG members at the regional level and KEG members at the local level. The group plan actions is currently on the group's website, open for public feedback, though the main focus is targeted engagement. It's those partner agencies that we're working with, because there's some responsibilities that lie with Lifeline Utilities, the actual implementation. So the team leaders are going around through those groups, and this is bringing that everyone on board so we're all pulling in the same direction and know what we should be doing year by year. And just note, as mentioned earlier, this document was included in the legal review that was sent with the strategic group plan, and also has gone, because it's a supporting document referenced by, what is it, conclusion, and it's got the same dates for feedback as the strategic group plan. That's all.
Thank you for that. Are there any past questions to Vicky on this issue? There being no further questions, thank you for your presentation. Can I have somebody move that we accept this motion? Councillor Lee, or Deputy Chair Lee, sorry. Have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Pike. The motion is now on the floor. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried, ladies and gentlemen. We move to page 152 on my agenda, which is 7.6, the group work program, Q3. And this is just to the high level assurance reporting the status of the Joint Committee endorsed work program 24 to 26.
Thank you, Chair. If you're okay,
Julian, yes.
I'll just stay here. So as the Chair just pointed out, this is a high-level assurance reporting in relation to the work programme. So for the period for July 24 to March 25, there were 23 actions being monitored. 4 of those actions are off track but have mitigation in place. So when I say off track, they were the original dates set. So we've never actually pressed a reset and created new dates. So they're off track based on the original date that we set. And there were 12 actions are on track, and 7 actions were completed by the end of that third quarter. So from if you want an assurance or a risk perspective, I'll focus on the ones that are off track, the 4 matters that are off track, and they relate to, 2 of them relate to working with iwi and Māori. One of them relates to Lifeline Utilities work that is not being progressed within the expected timeframes. And one of them relates to strategic planning for recovery, and that is impacted by vacancies at the local authority level in relation to local recovery managers. What I would like to highlight in terms of some of the work that's, so the iwi work, for example, will always be shown off track with mitigation in place because the date that we set was a number of years ago and we've been trying to work through this. But just to give you some update in relation to the working with Māori to identify appropriate representation within governance and planning, we have now got going to KEG next quarter is we've done some local work planning, JMA bottom up, as you recall, bottom up work planning with iwi, and as a consequence of that bottom up work planning, Waikato Tainui as an individual iwi have nominated members to go and sit on KEG. So that's a huge step forward. And if that is followed by other iwi as we go forward, then we'll be making some really good progress in that space. The other areas where we're off risk in terms of the Lifeline Utilities, this relates to local authority planning being integrated within other resilience building activities. And what we're finding is that the local authority planning is underway with the Lifeline Utilities, but there are some agencies who are not incorporating that. We're doing agencies that we have influence on. We're trying to get them to incorporate these, this resilience and CDEM planning within their work. So it's work ongoing by the Community Resilience and Recovery team. Some progress is being made, but not as much as we would like at this stage. And as I've talked about the strategic planning for recovery, some councils have completed their recovery planning, but some haven't because of vacancies in recovery manager vacancies. And I think you'll find later on in one of the public excluded motions, there are going to be appointment for at least one or request for at least one of those vacancies to be filled for recovery manager. So that's my high level overview, Chair. There's nothing in terms of risk that I'm identifying to you that needs escalation.
Thank you very much for that, Julian. That's very, very good. Does anybody like to make a comment at all or question? There being no comments or questions, could I have the motion being moved, please? Would somebody move the motion? Councillor Buckthorpe, have I got a seconder? Councillor Smith? All those in favour, the motion's on the floor. Against? I take the motion as carried. Thank you. We move on to group finances 7.7. And once again, you, Julian.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So provide an update on the financial performance for the period Q3 ending March 25. You'll see that actually it's a 6%, the 6% gap between what we or being under budget. So that looks quite healthy within the certainly within the 5% of budget at the end of the year. I think we're expected to be, but it doesn't tell the whole story, unfortunately. So I just need to identify that there are a number, as per the commentary, there are a number of purchase orders that are open in relation to, and we're waiting for creditors to invoice us. Some of that invoicing is outside of the budget settings that were established at the beginning of the year, particularly when I refer to legal costs. So we have significantly overspent in those legal advice budgets this year, particularly around the coronial inquest. And that's ongoing, and that's why we haven't had those invoices haven't finished yet, that we can reconcile those, for example. And also some unexpected legal costs around making sure that our group plan was our group plan was legally compliant. So there are some legal costs that will exceed budget lines. Plus, as I've already indicated, in terms of the service level agreement, there's going to be some immediate short-term redundancy impact costs and impacts that will be washed up, I believe, in the first part of next year. So I'm just highlighting to you now, we'll give you a more detailed finance report in the next quarter, but it's not as, current picture paints a far healthier position than I expect us to be at the end of Q4.
Thank you for that, Julian. That certainly does paint a picture, as I say, when they have all the costs coming in, that we will have to address, but we will have a slightly less position financially. That's great. Anybody who wants to make a statement or comment? Can I have somebody move that we accept this report, please? Deputy Mayor Thomas Lee, seconder, Deputy Mayor Williams. All those in favour, the motion's on the floor. Against? Motion is carried. We move on to 7.8, which is the government reforms update, which, as I say, is for Vicky again. So thank you, Vicky.
Thank you. I'll just put it a bit closer. This report's provided for information, and attached to it is, just for formality, the submission that the group undertook to NEMA's discussion document on strengthening emergency management legislation. And the other main update in there is about what's happening with the Resource Management Act, with two new pieces of legislation proposed, being Natural Environment Act and the Planning Act. With resource management reform now open for for feedback on proposals to update national direction, there were 3 packages released recently, and package 1 is about infrastructure and development, and that's the most relevant to emergency management. It includes proposed new policy, national policy statements on infrastructure, natural hazards, Papakāinga and granny flats, and that feedback was open from the 29th of May to the 27th of July. So there's so many moving cogs with the resource management at the moment. We've engaged external support to assist with drafting this submission, with the submission working group expected to meet early to mid-July when they confirm the date that they can have it drafted by. The calendar invite will be going out. In addition to preparing that draft submission, we see that there's a real strategic value in coordinating the constant evolving reform relative to the Resource Management Act, because it incorporates climate change, adaptation, and this is to ensure the group remains well informed and well positioned for proactive engagement. And I suppose another comment in this ever-changing and constant reform, I just got an email from the Ministry for Environment this morning noting there's been a change to the Waste Minimisation Act, and now councils can access funds in an emergency, 60%, and they've repurposed that the levy that's collected may now be used for that in an emergency. So, like I say, there's just so many moving things at the moment, and that's all.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for that extra bit of information. I wasn't aware of that, so it was only this morning, was it? So I hadn't heard that at all. So thank you for that. It will change our operations marginally, a little bit anyway. Any questions? Anyone got any questions at all?
It's not a question, Chair. It's more of it's building on Vicky's comments, really. So we've got one of our submitters earlier, who's still in the room, talked about the opportunities to strengthen the reduction activity in our group plan and the reduction lens of this group. And what we're asking to submit on in relation to the proposed changes to the RMA, particularly around the implications for regional spatial plans, there is an opportunity for us as a group to, there's already a mandate in the Civil Defence Act for this group to have a more active collective role in reduction space. And there is an opportunity here to try and influence the new RMA or what the new act, is particularly around spatial plans, because we already have committees with a mandate. That legislation is not likely to change, or it's not been signalled to change. They being those committees being KEG and Joint Committee. So the collective of the councils in this area already come together. And there's an opportunity to actually say, you don't need to go and create another committee. You don't need to go and create another body that inputs into risk reduction when it comes to regional spatial plans. We're already here. So yeah, I would strongly urge some very informed submissions. I said Vicky's already alluded to the fact we're bringing in a specialist to help us with this submission. There's a real opportunity here. And I would just highlight that at the moment, the opportunity is thus. If we want input into reduction from civil defence, our current approach as a group is that it's done in civil defence's input is normally through the emergency management officer at a local level. That emergency manager's officer's lens is informed by that council. So whatever the risk appetite of that council informs the input of that civil defence professional into that reduction planning. What we have an opportunity to do here is to actually get a consistent approach to risk appetite by having that conversation at an executive and a governance level, that input, take it away from the operational level influenced by organizational culture and bring it to a committee level influenced by a collective risk reduction culture. So it's a really good opportunity. Whether they listen is another thing, but unless we point out we're here and we already exist and we have the tools to deliver this, then somebody else is going to be given the mandate and have to muddle through it.
That's actually a very excellent statement, Julian. I really can see the logic. I certainly agree with one thing, that we do not want to create another entity over and above what we've got at the moment, because I think we've got enough infrastructure, and infrastructure on its own only tends to propagate itself rather than resolve the issues. We've got to actually try and get within our own infrastructure the right sort of combinations that we need to get there. So that's critical. Any person would like to make a further comment? Councillor Buckthorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Just to support Julian, all of us councils are going to have a huge amount of work coming up with regard to this Resource Management Act restructure. But it's not only a real opportunity for civil defence, and I probably shouldn't be saying it's not the forum, but it is a huge opportunity for each individual council to streamline their processes with regard to the RMA, because the RMA has been the biggest handbrake to our community's what's the word, growth and profitability. Really, it's a one in a lifetime chance to get it on the right track.
I tend to agree a little bit with you, but I won't get into local territorial authorities. That's beyond our capabilities here. But we do, I think, need to make very proactive submissions on these issues. The stronger our submission, the better we can represent ourselves and get a result that will reflect what Julie was saying in a lot of ways. I agreed with what you said. So thank you. We've got on the wall at the moment the government reforms update. That the report government reforms update, Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee, 16th June 2025, be received. Could I have somebody move that, please? Councillor Pike, Councillor Buckthorpe, all in favour as the motion's on the floor? Against? That is carried. We now move to 7.9. Sorry, I did push that off. 7.9 and call on KEG Coordinating Executive Group Chair Susan Law to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. The report is there and we can take that as read. It was a fairly routine KEG meeting, but I would like to highlight a couple of things. The first relates to the submissions received on the strategic group plan, which this committee has considered earlier in the meeting, as well as getting an update on the group work program. Again, this committee has received an update on that. Just to highlight one of the issues discussed, which were the service level agreements update. And while there was disappointment that the Regional Council has determined not to consider or not to continue the administrative support, I think those councils who are involved, of which obviously my council is one, see this as a good opportunity to better control the indirect costs and actually have much more on the ground input and consistency across our 3 councils. I can report that I think it's South Waikato District Council that's holding up the final agreement. We've got lawyers looking through the service level agreement, but rest assured we have agreed in principle. The other issue that was sort of raised and discussed at some, with some discussion, was around the, well, not surprisingly, the government reforms as well as the financial update. It's not surprising, like all local authority agencies, of which this is a collective, there's a massive workload on at the moment. So it's not, not unexpected that Julian would want to move some of his resource into supporting the reforms and our response to the reforms. And unfortunately, we do require legal input from time to time. Other than that, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Susan. That was the excellent report. Does anyone want any questions to Keg? There being no questions, that we move, and I'll move this from the chair, that the report coordinating executive group meeting summary be received. Thank you. Councillor Deputy Mayor got it. So we have the motion on the floor. All those in favour? Motion is carried, ladies and gentlemen. We move on to the 7.0 and we ask Matthew Bramwell to come and speak. And this is just to provide the Joint Committee an emergency management update from the national focus.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you very much. Just a couple of updates. I'll take the report has been read. One of the main ones is the EM bill as has been discussed through your government reforms notion. The Minister intends to introduce that new bill in the second half of 2025. During April and May, we invited submissions on the issues and options outlined in the discussion document. We received around 400 submissions. Quite a lot of them were substantive, so we're looking at around 20 to 40 pages on each submission. So at this moment in time, we're going through those submissions. Final policy decisions are being looked at and should be made later in the year as the Minister introduces the new EM bill through to Parliament. MSIP and MSOS programmes, the investment roadmap to build a fit-for-purpose emergency management system, MSIP, and the emergency management sector operational systems, MSOS, is currently with the Minister for Emergency Management and Recovery. So thank you for the group for your input on that. We should hopefully have that or provide an update for you later this month, and I should be able to provide a further update at the next joint committee. The other one I just wanted to mention, or two other ones, is the Nationwide Emergency Mobile Alert. Hopefully you'll receive that alert test in May, on the 25th of May. The test was deemed quite a success. We expect around 9 out of 10 people should have received that alert. and that test was supported by a public education campaign in advance of the test alert going out. If you're keen and interested, it was broadcast on 7 sharp the following day, so it is still online on TVNZ. So there is actually a video about how it was actually put together and shown, and how the actual alert was actually triggered. So there's some information online about that as well. The final one I just wanted to bring for your attention is NEMA has now obtained authorised reseller for Starlink. So I know a number of councils have been interested in that, including Hamilton City. It is through a cost recovery basis, and it is the first of its kind for a government agency globally as well. So NEMA is the first to do that. We are undergoing a test phase now with Fire Emergency New Zealand, Waikato, NZTA, and with Canterbury CDEM Group. So once that test and that trial has been completed, we will be rolling that out throughout New Zealand from north through to south. So we're looking towards the end of the year when that becomes available to the CDEM Group. And that is it from NEMA.
Thank you very much, Matthew. It's an excellent report. Has anyone got any questions, Matthew? And NEMA at all? Yeah, Group Controller.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, it would be remiss of me not to ask Matthew why he's not talked about the tsunami guideline.
Well, the tsunami guidelines.
Because the Waikato was the only group, not wishing to cast a shadow here, but the Waikato about 12, 18 months ago was the only group who were highlighted as the only group inconsistent with the guidelines. So I just wonder where we are now, Matthew.
I didn't think you'd bring that one up, but thank you. Acknowledgement the fact that you are the only group to do that, and now obviously the rest of New Zealand will be going down that route in the next few years. I believe there is a timeline of, I actually can't recall when that timeline is, but it is available. But yes, all of New Zealand will be required as part of the director's guidelines to have a blue zone. Thank you, Julian.
I saw it, and it's actually on my agenda here, but I wasn't going to worry too much about it. Well done. As no questions, can we move, and I will move from the chair, that the report National Emergency Management Agency update from be accepted and received. I have a seconder, Councillor Buckthorpe. All those in favour as the motion's on the floor? Against? That motion is carried. Thank you. Right, we now move into, and I request that we have a resolution to exclude the public and to move in public excluded, please. That's Councillor Smith has moved. You have a seconder. Deputy Mayor Williams is seconded. All those in favour, please. Against? All right, we'll just wait for everything online. While we're talking, Councillor John Grant left the meeting at 12:03 today. So